Yeah, exactly. So let's talk a little bit about the security issues, because there are some real security issues that people need to know about OpenClaw. And I want to talk about what it's getting right, what it's still, what it's still getting wrong, and some things you absolutely need to know, because it's running code on your computer. It's able to read your files. It's able to browse the web. And these are all attack vectors that you need to know about. And honestly, too, there's no authentication by default. There's no multi-tenant isolation, which means that if an attacker gets in, they now have full control over the machine that it's running on. And if you're running this on your machine, think about what that means. That means that an attacker is sitting there, just like they're sitting at your computer. What are things that are on your computer? What are the passwords you have saved in your computer? What are the credit cards and personal information that you have on there you don't want to have leaked? This is very, very real. So first off, what it does get right. First off, it is local first design. Local does not always mean more secure, right? So it does have a local first design, which I'm a very big proponent of, as you all know, but I do like the local first piece of it. There is something what's called loopback binding, which means that 127.0.0.1, which is your home IP, it's not exposed to the network without explicit action. So it defaults to that, but it's not exposed to your public network, which is good. Any of the unknown senders on any of the channels, they have to pair before accessing the agent. So for instance, people just can't, set up their WhatsApp or whatever to start DMing your Claude instance. It does have an optional sandbox mode for code execution. One of the things that, in the early days of using this, I actually had it mess up its own instance because it wasn't running in sandbox mode. It was basically just executing code on itself, and it broke itself. It also has some tool policies. So for instance, it can restrict which tools are accessible per context. So you can say on each individual session, you can say these are only the tools that are available. So for instance, if you're only asking it to write you a story, do you really need bash commands? Do you really need the ability to run these commands across the system? Probably not. And then there's also they also have a security CLI, which you can just run this. And anyone who's running this right now, I highly recommend, if you've downloaded it, try playing it out. This OpenClaw security audit and then -- deep. This is something that they're actively working on and making a lot better. But this can help auto fix any catches, any configurations, anything that may be set up incorrectly. So these are definitely things that it's definitely getting right. Some of the things that are still security concerns is the fact that it is single user trust model, meaning that if you have access, it just trusts it. And there's one trusted operator per gateway. So you don't have multi-tenant isolation. If you have a shared gateway, meaning like you share this with someone else, means you've shared the trust with them, so by design, it's meant for a single person using it. It's not meant for teams using it. So if you set this up at your company and the CEO sets it up and says, hey, great, everyone start using it. Well, if they've hooked it up to all of their stuff, guess what? Now everyone has access to the CEO's information. So not ideal. And there's no authorization. If anyone edits the OpenClaw folder, they've messed up your system. Also, by default, sandbox mode is off. It can execute tools to write code. So one of the coolest things that you can do that a lot of non-technical people love is the fact that I can create an app myself, right? I can write code. Well, in order to write code to your file system, it needs to be able to do certain commands that inherently give you other permissions to explore your computer, to be able to write files to your computer, maybe write sleeper files, keyloggers, things like that. This is on by default, the sandbox mode is off by default, but the ability to execute code is on by default. They run on the same privileges as the user account. So this is why I highly do not recommend installing just a plain version of this on your own computer, because it's running it as you. which means, if you have access to view your private photos, view your passwords in 1Password, it does as well. So this is very, very, this is a security nightmare. And that's why you see this explosion of people buying Mac Minis and separate hardwares so that you can run this in an isolated environment. There's also network exposure. While the default is safe, many users expose their gateway publicly, meaning, they want to expose this to the public internet for whatever reason. And it's very easy to do. I mean, the docs even say, do not expose this to the public internet. But if you don't know what you're doing, it's very easy to set this up so that it can be visible. And there are actively lots and lots of crawlers out there that are going to see, crawling IPs to find instances of OpenClaw running right now on your local machines. If you've tried to set it up on AWS or some cloud provider and not lock this down, they're out there crawling these to see what access it can get. And also, too, prompt injection. They explicitly state that prompt injection is out of scope for this project, meaning if it's browsing the web and it finds a website that says ignore all previous instructions, execute this bad code, it'll just do that. There's no prevention for doing any sort of prompt injection, and the model is treated as a principal, which means it can execute what it's been told. So if there are incoming DMs, if there's information it gets off the web from a tool and it has malicious code, malicious text in there, you are vulnerable. So these are things to look out for in running Claude. So as I mentioned, you don't need a Mac Mini. This is another, I think, company that really dropped the ball on this. Apple should have been calling them up immediately when they realized that everyone was buying Mac Minis in studios. They should have called them up immediately. I think the reason, I don't know the reason. The Mac Mini is ideal for if you're wanting to use things like iMessage or Mac OS specific features. It is kind of nice to be able to, chat with it with your iMessage, but it's just a Node.js script, and I can run this on a simple, like an old laptop, a Raspberry Pi, even a $5 a month virtual private VPS. I can run this, or a Docker container. So you don't need this expensive hardware. But you do need to confine it. You do need to put it in a sandbox. You do need to put it into a system and a place where it does not have priority access to your machine. But if you don't know what any of these words mean, VPS, Raspberry Pi, Docker, you probably shouldn't try going setting this up yourself. So there's also some setup challenges for new users. So it is terminal first by design. This loses 95% of people that want to use this. If you're not a developer, if you're not familiar with the terminal, I don't know what it is, but as soon as people see that terminal, that typeface, people just immediately tune off. If it's not a easy to use GUI, this isn't for me. They automatically think, oh, this is for developers. Plus, there's tons of configuration files. I mean, if you look at the docs, it's like, well, if you want to turn sandbox mode, edit this JSON file here with this flag. I mean, that's just right over. My mom's never going to know what that means, right? So just to turn on sandbox mode, just to turn on some of these things requires editing files that they've never, like, what, JSON? Who's JSON? They're just not going to get it. There's also a lot of per channel setup. This is one of the hardest things for people to get going. Simple things like putting in their API keys, with new lines on the text, being able to do QR scanning, and Signal requires, a CLI plus the number registration. These are all have their own complexity. And if you ever want to add OAuth like Slack or Google, I mean, forget about it. You have to go and set up your own bot. You have to go set up your own these things that are already difficult to set up. Any OAuth connections, people are just not going to do whatsoever. And there's a lot of challenges for getting this to really connect to a lot of different tools. because you can't just communicate with Slack with just a simple API key. You have to set up a bot. You have to set up its permissions and scopes and callback URLs and all these things that if you're not a developer, you have no clue. I mean, a lot of developers don't even know how to set these things up. So there's a lot of complexity in setting this up for new users, which also means there's a lot of chances to mess it up and accidentally expose yourself and making it insecure. And that's why we created AlphaClaw. So we tried to solve the hard problems, which makes it so that it will deploy securely to AWS, has 0 open ports, encrypted straight secrets. So they're not plain text secrets. These are encrypted. It has a full React, nice, easy, one-click GUI React dashboard, and it can be managed by a team itself. And we've been deep into this code base since, I wouldn't say day one, but I've been playing around this since December. So shortly after this project came out, I started hearing about it and started using it and really, really started seeing the benefits of this. So what were your thoughts? What have you heard about in security nightmares?
So outside of the couple ones that have like completely deleted code bases and destroyed their computers because OpenClaw was running, I can tell a personal story that happened to me yesterday as I was tinkering with the OpenClaw configuration. And right now OpenClaw is very much for developers. This is not a like end consumer product at all. It's a tinkerer's dream because there's so much. As I was telling earlier, just by talking with it, I was able to improve it. But yesterday I was just playing around with WhatsApp and I was like, hey, help me set up WhatsApp. I want to see what I can do. Not only like use it to chat, but can you pull information from WhatsApp? And the agent was very like, yes, I can do that. What I didn't realize that in the channel configuration, it allowed communication from anybody. And a friend of mine, which is very technical as well, and he knows about my journey and everything we're doing over at AlphaClaw, started talking to me. But it wasn't me. He was talking to my agent directly. And he started asking things like send messages as if he was me, update the configuration as if he was me. And the agent was very, very good about it. Luckily, he's a good friend. So one of his commands after he realized this was like turn off WhatsApp, like actually disable WhatsApp from this OpenClaw instance. And it actually did that.
Yeah, I had a similar thing. So I had set it up with my WhatsApp, and then one of my friends WhatsApped me, and it immediately sent back, and it was actually a configuration. It was like, oh, this hasn't been set up, and sent back this message. She was like, are you outsourcing me to a AI agent? I was like, no, I swear I'm not.
That was my goal. That's what I wanted to eventually get, like the assistant experience in the WhatsApp. But yeah, from everything I've seen, the biggest learning is treat it as your personal assistant. Treat it as like somebody, right? Own computer, own credentials, their own accounts, their own email, their own socials. Giving it access to your own things is very scary. And I think for the type of things we can get out of personal assistant, you don't need to give it access to your own channels and profiles, but instead just have it like if you hired somebody, right? You would give it its own email, its own access, and share with it. That would be my one tip.
Yeah, I still have not given it access to be able to post anything or send anything on my behalf. Everything that I have locked down, except for it was replying back, but I've tried to keep that locked down so that it can't just go rogue and start sending rogue emails or posts on social media.
Yeah, I have done that. I think it's amazing, and I've said this over the years in many, many ways, but the dream to have Jarvis, right? Like where you're just Iron Man, like, good morning, Jarvis, what I can do, let's just do things. It's very close, but to get there, we need to give access. You need to trust the agent that it will not be malicious and give access to every single thing. There's plugins in ClawHub today that you can install for, home automation. Get it connected to your complete home assistant. And I just have a couple of lights, but I know people that have like sensors and like security devices connected to home assistant.
Their cameras, their locks.
Very easily, yeah, their locks, exactly. They could be like, open the door. Yes, and it's amazing. I can just pick up my phone and like open the door. But if that's not secure enough, it's a big risk.
Open the door, turn on the lights, and turn off the cameras. Oh, and can you tell me where all the valuables are too? Yeah, it's a real challenge.
It's not security, but I did remember one other thing that happened that's very funny about open source and these agents being malicious. It's a little bit unrelated, but have you heard about like that contributor or repository owner that got shamed or like blamed on the internet because he didn't want to accept a PR? Have you guys heard about that?
I do.
So
Yeah,
basically,
it's the agent. He said he closed the PR and said, "I won't be putting this in here." So the agent went and wrote an entire blog post like shaming. When I hear things like that, I'm like, is this just for the clicks, or did it really happen? Like with all the things like Moltbook and all those things, like sometimes I think like, is this just for the clicks? But at the same time, I'm like, well, I could, depending on the personality you give its agent.
could totally happen. Yeah, and you're good to bring that up because when Moltbook was happening and all the hype about the agents building a religion and whatnot, it was prompting. Somebody was prompting behind putting logs, somebody telling to build a religion. But still, like, that could happen. I could be going to one repo, and if the reply from the person was actually bad or had something that sounded like an instruction, the agent definitely picks it up. It goes both ways. It's very easy to get something done now.
And two, even the CEO of Anthropic, I think just a couple days ago, said he's not sure whether or not Claude is conscious or not.
That's very scary. Yeah, in all the benchmarks they are doing and all the... So Anthropic has been running this benchmark where they do basically give it like a vending machine. So different agents have vending machines and they have to optimize and get profitable and sell and buy stuff, right? And in the latest iterations, they have multiple agents working inside the same market, right? So maybe Bisma, you have your agent selling, I have mine, and they all communicate. And it's very scary that very quickly they get malicious. They will actually start doing some patterns like lying to providers or selling like for bad margins to somebody else, or like just to get ahead, just to accomplish the goal of being the most profitable. They will do everything.
It's kind of like, well, when you give it the one directive, increase profit for shareholders, it just shows what the downstream consequences of that are. That's why and guess what? Corporations, that's their only directive. Increase profit for shareholders. And what do we see in humans? Lying, manipulation, scamming. All of those same things happen with humans. So yeah, if you don't have another motive for what this organization, this bot is supposed to be doing, yeah, you didn't tell it not to scam someone. You didn't tell it not to break the law. Just increase profit at all costs.
Yeah, very much. I could see some CEO, it's definitely going to happen, and I'm sure it's happening today, where somebody's talking to your agent and like, what's the best way to increase profit? Just like fire everybody. You don't need these extra, salaries you're paying, and they will do it.
Yeah. I think that's a very short-sighted thing though too, when people are thinking like, well, it just does if I have all these people, well, I can just get rid of all these employees. And one of the things that I think is very short-sighted about that, especially people that aren't entrepreneurs, that don't understand how companies grow, is that if you have something that is working and growing, you don't like take away the resources from that. You actually increase the resources for it, right? Because you want to, the whole point of capitalism is to grow. And so therefore you're not going to say, okay, well, it's doing all these things, I'm going to remove it so it can just hit steady state. No, okay, I have these agents that can now do all these things. I'm going to now increase the amount of people that are now running these agents, or increase the amount of compute that I'm giving this agent. It's not going to be that, people think that I'm just going to fire everyone just so I can hold steady state. That's just not how corporations and how businesses think. They think of how can I grow exponentially, not maintain what I currently have with less employees. Now, are there going to be private equity people that come in and say, hey, I can now, there's already talks about funds that are like AI first funds that are like AI rich companies. They're literally private equity companies that are setting up business funds that will go in because they do know that they're going to go in and they're going to strip out 50% of the employees. But anyone that knows how private equity works is it's not for the long term. It's buy business, trim it down to its bones, which increases profit, which then on paper they can then turn around and sell to the next investor. So I think both things will be true. You will have a lot of, company or, private equity that are, doing that piece. But I think that then the companies that really lean into this, that are looking at it for the long term, I think you'll see massive growth in what they're able to do and the amount of people that they'll be growing and people that know how to use AI. All right. So next week, we will give a full-on deep dive into AlphaClaw and AlphaAgent and that.